Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dark Pixel podcast. My name is Mike.
I'm Landon.
And my name is Kason.
And if you're listening to this audio only, we run two YouTube channels that you can check out, Dark Pixel and Dark Pixel Gaming. The first, Dark Pixels, where we do our filmmaking. Actually just uploaded a new video. When you see this, it'll be yesterday.
Yeah.
Called Life Remastered. And then the gaming channels where we do our gaming analysis. That's where this podcast goes. And we got lots of topics from last week that we want to talk about. Lots of Final Fantasy 15 stuff since Gamescom happened last week, and they released an hour-long gameplay video. They had 30-minute demos that people were playing there, so we'll be talking about that a lot. But first, we want to go over these PlayStation Slim rumors that are going around. We knew about the Neo, which is supposed to be announced here in the next couple weeks, but there's apparently going to be a PlayStation Slim as well. So, the closing ceremony of the Rio Olympics basically gave a teaser or an introduction to the 2020 Summer Olympics, which will be held in Japan, and they had a very interesting video that they played for that. Lots of video game related stuff, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15, so the movie spin-off of Final Fantasy 15, and all the bad reviews that it's getting, what we think that means for the story of the game.
As well as J.
Yeah,
Cross.
there's an addendum to that. J. Cross was wondering about which video game movies that we feel have gotten it right.
Okay, right.
We have a viewer, Thiago, who was at Gamescom. He was actually there at the conference and played Final Fantasy 15 extensively. He did a conference call with us and kind of explained everything about it. So we'll be going over some of the things that he talked with us about. We also got some more suggested topics here. One from Polive Tree, who said, how do you feel about games that are like Final Fantasy 15 specifically adopting more of this Western style combat system? OJ Simpson and Knuckles, which is a great name, wants to know what we think the worst Zelda games are. Then we got Human Eastrawan, who wants to know, is remastering and rebooting really necessary? This is both for video games and film franchises. And then the Yoshi Gamer asked, if you could have a crossover between any two franchises, which would they be? Okay.
A lot of good stuff this week.
So, I don't know tremendous amount about this PlayStation Slim, but I think what's interesting is that it apparently is going to be a thing, especially when they're going to have this PlayStation Neo, which is supposed to enable 4K, be a more powerful version of the machine, and then alongside that, the old version, but a Slim. I don't know. That seems like a really weird thing to do to me.
It is something that they've done before, though. And like all their systems, midway through its life, or maybe even towards the end of its life, they'll kind of release a more compact version of it. It's something Nintendo doesn't do, but I think Xbox
Nintendo has.
Have they?
They made a mini Wii.
Yeah, they did at the
It looks
very
weird.
end. The very
it
end.
looks so
I
weird.
have not seen that.
Yeah, the Wii was like done by that point.
Interesting. Okay, wow.
So I don't know if anybody even
a
has
mini
one.
Wii.
They're not going to do it for the Wii U.
They
I'll tell
usually
you that
don't
much.
do it, I guess. No.
Make the mini gamepad, dude. Make it really small.
Get the little gamepad, the mini 3DS. But yeah, it's something that's been done a lot. Like PS2 had like a little slim version, and I don't know if the PS3 did or not. Did it?
Yeah, PS3
They did have a
They had a slim
redesign.
one?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they do it, but you would think that they would kind of midlife that they would. I don't know. You would think they wouldn't do both. I was thinking the PS4 Neo was going to be their slim. They just found a way to upgrade it. And okay, here's the next middle thing, but it's actually a little more powerful. Kind of like the new 3DS kind of entry in the 3DS line. It's like, okay, it's a little different and more compact or whatever, but it's actually also more powerful. So I don't know. I kind of
it's not necessarily surprising that they're doing a PS4 Slim. Like like you said, they've done it on every system they've ever had. Right. It's weird that they're gonna do it alongside the Neo. To me, totally. It's like the Neo is the better version, and then you can have the older, worse version, but small. I don't know. It just seems like a weird thing to. announced
It's-
side by
So
side.
there's three
So-
PS4s now.
I mean, this is in light of, obviously this would have been planned a very long time ago, but the Xbox One S just released, which is
yes.
essentially in
The
some
slim
ways the same
version,
type of
yeah.
thing. But there's a lot they changed. Like the power supply for the Xbox One S is not outside anymore.
Oh.
It's like they've incorporated inside of the system now.
Interesting. So you just have a cord.
Yeah, they made a lot of changes, although supposedly it doesn't actually run quieter than it did, but it does suck up less power.
Well,
So-
see, they announced that and released it before they have.
Yeah, they haven't even
right?
announced Scorpio yet.
Yeah, they're
That's
pretty
true.
far away.
So
from
that
Scorpio,
makes
probably.
sense to me. It's like here's a slim
Right.
version of the
Yeah.
product that you can buy now.
So-
And again, this is speculation. I don't know if they're going to announce this alongside the Neo or not. This is
Right,
just
this
a
is a
rumor that's come out
rumor.
this week, and it would make sense if they're going to have a big event to announce the Neo that they
Yeah.
would also announce this. And I don't
It's.
know.
I think if they're going to do a PlayStation 4 Slim at all, that's not going to have Neo specs, then they might as well do it now because it would be a little weird.
Yeah.
Like, let's say the Neo comes out this year, and then let's say for next holiday season, and here's the old PlayStation 4, but like a different version of that. They
Yeah.
probably
That
want
would
everyone
make
to
sense.
buy.
I would because
a
I think
Neo.
they
They
would
would do it
want
at the
people
same
to
time.
push them to
Yeah.
the Neo.
Because all of a sudden your PS4s become not obsolete, but they, if you're pushing, here's a smaller version of the old one that's cheaper, and here's the Neo. What do the suppliers do with all the PS4s they have in stock? No one's going to buy those.
See, one thing
So it makes sense they give the Neo, and then the PS4 gets discounted. They get rid of those. Then they introduce the Slim. Like that. That's a smart.
I actually feel like
Way to do
someone
it.
was selling PS4s like dirt cheap a little while back, like 2
Oh.
weeks ago or so on
I think
eBay.
it was a sale on eBay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't remember how much they were though.
You're probably, if this is true, you're going to see
Like a
some
retailer or something.
It wasn't a
Yeah.
retailer; it was on eBay.
It was
but
on eBay.
It was
They had a
like,
lot of
where did
ratings,
this guy get
but,
these?
yeah.
But I imagine that like the value proposition moving forward, if they do announce this in September, is a place you can get the old model or the old spec PlayStation 4, but it'll be smaller
Right.
and fit
Yeah,
places that
exactly.
you can't shove the other one. I don't know.
It'll fit on
And
top
then-
of your VHS VCR.
Maybe the Neo will have the same form factor as the original, but I don't know. It is weird. You have to wonder like who specifically do they envision as the audience for this? It can't be
Yeah.
anyone who's really into gaming because they're going to be going to the Neo.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Or they already have a
do they
PS4.
just do
People-
this to keep up appearances
Exactly.
because there's a 1S,
Yeah. I
Xbox
don't-
One S, and they're like, okay, well our model's
Right.
like 4 years old or whatever it is at this point, so we've got to. Oh no, we're not selling an old model; we're selling a new model too.
Yeah.
I don't know. It
That's
is
entirely possible.
It seems like a strange thing to do at this particular time.
Yeah.
unless the
But-
Neo is going to be like a lot more expensive than people think. I don't know. If it is, maybe there's still a huge
that's-
market for just a regular
that's
PS4.
interesting.
I don't know.
Well, specifically, if a lot of the people who are going to get the Neo are going to want it to play PSVR, I mean, you got to add that cost on top of it too. So
Yeah.
you've got a
Yeah,
pretty
PSVR is like
expensive set here.
$300.
300, yeah.
$350
And if
maybe?
the PS4K, whatever that Neo, is $400 or $500, then you've got it's like an $800 deficit right there
Yeah, it's
to
a lot.
play some
Oh,
VR.
VR gaming is expensive if you want
Yeah.
it to be the best experience available today. So that's so something alongside these rumors was also just today. It's supposedly been leaked that they're going to have an adapter so you can connect your DualShock 4 to wirelessly to your PC and have
Oh,
all
right.
the functionality of DualShock 4. Now you can already there's already ways to do that, and specifically there's already ways to use a DualShock 3, DualShock 4, which we've done a lot, but it's not officially supported. So this is actually official PlayStation 4 support, as well as the news leaking that PlayStation Now is rumored to be available on PC platforms. So
Really?
I actually read
Which-
also
which
that they
means-
just hiked the price. I think $10
Of PlayStation Now?
for their
yeah, so that's crazy because it's like Microsoft is pretty much doing the same type of thing where you own one copy and you can play it on either your PC or on your Xbox. And so maybe
It's
this
easy
is
for
Sony's
them.
way of. I know it's weird,
It's
right? Like
everyone's
Microsoft
running
owns
Windows.
the the platform, so I mean the software end of it, so to speak. So
Right.
that's anyways. I mean, supposedly these will all be revealed in September. September's gonna be a huge month
Yeah.
for
Yeah, there's
all
a
kinds of
heck of a
companies.
lot
Yeah,
of
Nintendo and-
stuff. I can't wait for Tokyo Game Show, dude. It's gonna be
Yeah.
I think it starts
We're
on
gonna
the
get an NX
15th of
an
September.
NX reveal. this PS Neo reveal,
I
Scorpio
think the
reveal.
Neo's going to be September 7th, actually.
Oh yeah, it'll be before
Might come a
Tokyo
little
Game
ahead,
Show.
yeah.
And I'm also reading that like Nintendo's not going to have like a big presence at Tokyo Game Show, meaning that they might actually just do like their own like, event or direct or something.
They love to do that.
Yeah,
they love to do that.
So
I mean,
I
there
prefer
isn't
that. Actually.
there isn't
I like
any
the
reason
directs.
not to.
Yeah, exactly. Unless I'm there, I prefer a direct.
To my understanding, this is the last big game show before the NX's announcement or release date, which is March of next year, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if anyone is
Yeah.
making a game for the NX that they want to start building hype for, this game show is
this
a
would be
great
the last
opportunity
time.
for it. Yeah. So,
So you
you'd
think it should be
imagine
announced
Nintendo has
before-
to announce it at least the day before the show.
You know, that would
if
be
not
smart.
at the show, so that you can see the NX version
Yeah.
of Dragon Quest 11 or whatever is going to be shown.
Right.
Smart. I like that.
So
You know, I just realized something. Speaking of when I mentioned the 3DS and then the new 3DS, which is more powerful and all that stuff, they also came out with the 2DS, but that was a little bit later, I guess. But that would be more comparable to the PS4 Slim, right? So you've got your 3DS, you got your more powerful 3DS, and then you've got your kind of cheaper, less expensive 3DS again. But it's missing some features, but that's not a big deal to some people, I guess.
Well, I think was mostly, well, not mostly, but largely made for kids so that they don't use the
whole
3D
thing, right? Yeah.
because parents were freaking out about
Yeah.
that.
But
also
on
it's
top of that, it's like enormously cheaper than a 3DS, like by almost $100. So I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
you
the
can-
Slim won't be quite like that.
I mean, that's true. That's what's the price point of the Slim going to be? Because honestly,
that's a good
it has to
question.
take over just a regular PS4 because there's
Right.
just no freaking reason. Like the only advantage to a Slim is just it's a redesign and it's just
Smaller.
a smaller
you can
model.
fit it
Like
in
I
a
bought
crack
the
now.
PlayStation, the PS1, I think they called it at
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, PS1.
I bought that. That's the PlayStation 1 that I have. And when you put that side by side with the
it's
original,
way
Yeah.
way
It's basically
smaller.
the size of the disc, you know.
It adds
It's just-
some extra appeal late in a
Yeah.
console's life cycle to be, oh, hey,
Right.
check it out. We kind of tweak things a little bit, and that must work for some people. But
Well,
especially if
but
there were hardware flaws.
Nintendo
but
just announced the NES Mini. And it takes them like 20 years, but they they catch up too. They're in the game.
well, they did that. That's actually a good point. They did that with the Super Nintendo. There was like
like a
smaller Super
Oh,
NES,
That's right.
but I guess they
I
did
don't
not do
remember a
that
ton
with
of
the
people
NES.
have it.
didn't do. I don't think they did it with the NES,
They didn't have
unless
a-
they're that top loader one. But I think that's a more recent build.
I feel like that's
that's
more
like something
recent.
that they made.
Yeah.
Because that reads SNES and NES cartridges, I'm pretty sure, right?
No, I think there's one that's just
It's
a top
just an
loader
NES?
NES one.
Oh, wow.
But I don't know if it was a Nintendo made thing or some
Someone
dude
else
made that or
like
whatever.
a
but,
Retron 5 or something
Yeah.
like that.
but I don't remember if there was a top loader. There might have been one in Japan, a top loader NES. No, because they had Famicom, so I don't know.
But the 64 and the GameCube didn't have that, right? Because that
No.
would have kind of ruined their form factor.
Yeah, a smaller GameCube, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, just the discs were small enough. They could have done it.
Should have made the discs even smaller. Stop those pirates from pirating your game. It's
Exactly.
not. You're going on a piracy rant, but it is not worth screwing over your normal customers just to try and
keep-
stifle some element of piracy.
Totally.
When they can,
Agreed.
they could circumvent it anyways.
Yep.
But
They'll find a way, dude. Like, you're not going to be able to stop.
you're not gonna. So now everyone has GameCube games that could only store so much.
Make your
Yeah.
service more convenient than the pirates do.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
all it takes, man.
so
So PS Slim, we have a PS4 now. So
But we have
will
PS4.
be
We're really
purchasing
happy with
this
it.
Yeah.
It's
Slim.
we're really happy with. This is actually
Yeah, we
the
like it.
and speaking of the different versions of the PS4, there's like the original like launch PS4 like 1.0 and then like a 1.1 and 1.2. This is the 1.2.
Oh,
So
sweet.
this which increased performance and to some degree.
doesn't melt as easily.
So we're really happy with it.
Yeah, we
I
love
think it's a really great system.
Yeah, for anyone who's
Um,
just following the podcast and maybe didn't see other videos we put
Oh,
up
yeah.
last week, that was Bob Talon,
Bob Talon
viewer.
donated it.
Yeah.
because he's just
So that
just the
that
biggest,
solves our
enormous,
PlayStation 4
biggest
crisis for
beast.
the moment.
ever. Yeah, so it's so funny because like
we
I
would
was,
we would have been at a weird place with these announcements for the PS4. Which one do we get? You know.
Yeah, it's like peace. Anyways, no, we have one and we love it. Thank you very much. By the way, this is kind of just an off tangent thing. I thought of, since you can stream directly from the PS4. But we started. Well, I don't know if you set yours up yet.
I haven't set mine up yet. I need
You got to set yours up. But we each started our own individual Twitch channels.
Yeah.
And what the purpose of that is to, aside from just having a presence on Twitch, which we don't have, is for us on our own time while we're collecting game footage or doing whatever, just to be able to stream and interact with you guys, just kind of get some raw,
I wish there was a way to
gameplay.
stream from the PlayStation Vita. Because I've been playing Persona 4 every night, and I'm just like, man, I wish I could be streaming
put
this.
it online. Yeah.
PS TV, man.
Got to
Got it right
transfer
there.
my save files.
That's true.
over.
You could.
Can I transfer my saves? That's cool.
That's a good question. I mean, you could put the card in.
It doesn't.
Is it to the
it's
system
installed?
downloaded?
Yeah, it's downloaded.
But could you transfer that onto a card from the system
Maybe.
onto the card and then put it in there?
I'll have to look into that. That might work.
Oh, we might be doing that then.
Might be able to do that. We'll see. Anyways,
cool.
What was I saying? Okay, we're moving on to
streaming. We were just talking about streaming.
Oh yeah. So if you want to follow us on Twitch, you have to search Mike_DarkPixel or Kason_DarkPixel and soon to be Landon_DarkPixel.
I better get that before.
Yeah, hopefully nobody steals. You should
Do it right now. Do it right now, seriously, like before we upload this podcast.
Yeah, we'll do it after we record.
Okay, so let's move on to the Rio Olympics.
Yeah, we had. So the Rio Olympics, I watched some of the Olympics. Did you guys get to watch very much?
Yeah,
I watched stuff.
Not
I didn't
one
watch
second of the Olympics.
Okay,
I got to watch some of my favorite events, so that was nice.
Watched some of the diving, swimming, gymnastics, some of
volleyball.
the track and field stuff.
Yeah, track.
So, but yeah, so they all wrapped up, and they're moving on to Tokyo for the next Summer Olympics. But the next Winter Olympics, I don't know where those are going to be.
Oh, hold
the
on,
heck got
Korea.
that? Korea?
No, Korea's is 2022, maybe.
Oh, really?
I can't remember who's.
So
can't remember
next Summer Olympics 2020 are going to be in Tokyo. And so they always do this at the end of the closing ceremonies. They do like a handoff to the next country.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to incorporate whatever they want as their motifs or themes there because they've got the world's attention. Because a lot of people watch. I don't know what the numbers were for this one, but a lot of people watch the opening and closing ceremonies of the Olympics.
Yeah.
I remember like watching
Beijing's
in 2008.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy crap. It's this country's opportunity to sell themselves to the world.
Yeah.
Like, check us out. We're cool for these reasons.
Yeah.
We got great dancers, man. we can choreograph this shows. So anyways, for the Rio one, you guys may have been aware of this already. Videos have been uploaded all over the place, but they just keep getting taken down. Because any videos of any Olympic stuff gets taken down.
Yeah, the Olympics.
You can't even use the Olympic
on
rings in any media anywhere.
That's so stupid.
They're crazy about that. But Japan's section at the end showed they're in Tokyo. They're showing some sports, athletic stuff in Tokyo. And then they show a little bit of some anime and then some Pac-Man, like he's boxing with the dude. And then Doraemon comes flying in. And then the prime minister's like, I'm not going to get to Rio in time. And then so he puts on like a red hat and turns into Mario. And he's carrying this red ball that symbolizes like Japan's flag. And then he runs out into the middle of. Is he in Shinjuku, right there, or
is that where the cross is, or is it
the crossing in Shinjuku?
Yeah.
But he's in Tokyo, and Doraemon pulls out a big old green pipe and slams it down, and it drills through the earth all the way to Rio. And
Shibuya.
Mario,
I think it's Shibuya.
Oh, it's Shibuya. It is in Shibuya. It's Shibuya. And then Mario jumps through and then ends up in Rio, and then in the actual stadium in Rio, Prime Minister pops up out of the pipe, dressed like Mario for like a split second. He tried.
Yeah,
they should have kept it on quicker, a little longer, but it all drops off, and then he takes off his hat, and people are going crazy.
Yeah.
So it's just really interesting because it's like this is this country's opportunity to pitch themselves to the world. This is why we're cool, or why we're a great tourist destination or whatever. And they showed some soccer anime twice. They showed and then a couple video game characters, Pac-Man and Mario, and Doraemon kind of anime, but Mario was by far and away the largest feature of that. So that's
so Japan associates themselves with Mario like very closely. It's like we're the dudes that made Mario. Everybody remember this guy?
Yeah, that's true. He's basically the guy because it was like they were relaying this red ball kind of and
Right.
chucking it to each other, and then Mario's the last one to
and
take
then
it
Mario
over.
gets it, yeah. And goes through his pipe through the center of the world to Brazil.
Through the and
But it is so cool that they picked video games to be their cultural ambassador, because Japan does a lot. Like, everyone knows about their video games, sure, but Japan is like this huge tech hub in the world. They have like big fashion shows all the time. They make everyone's cars, basically. They do a lot of things that generate, I believe, a lot more revenue than video games.
cars,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are really involved. But that's what they picked to be their cultural ambassador.
Here's the crazy thing. Like, nobody goes, well, can't say nobody. Somebody's done it. But people don't tend to go to visit Japan because, like, oh, dude, my Toyota Camry is just a sick car. I freaking love it. I want to go to the Toyota factory or something.
Yeah, let's go see where
or
it was
go
made. Yeah.
check it out. I'm certain that there
That's
are people
true.
that have done that. But
Right.
But somebody might be into video games or anime and be like, dude, I want to go and see this country these things are coming from.
Yeah.
There's something about those two things where it connects with people on like a human level versus a practical level. Like, you need a car.
That's true.
And you pick this one because it's the best one for your needs, but not because you're like freaking like you got Toyota Camry posters all over your room.
Some people might, but
I mean, okay, yeah, it's true. It's true. There are people way into cars.
right.
And so but I feel like, so what was actually really weird to me when I lived in Japan, I was surprised to see that the average like adult in Japan actually had an unfavorable opinion of video games. Which I would have expected that everyone there was like, video games are
Just
sweet,
okay
right?
with it,
This
yeah.
is sort of, but there's a huge dialogue of video games are destroying today's youth in Japan as well.
Interesting.
Kind of like you see in the United States. And I was really
weird.
surprised to see that.
Well, that's funny because the Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, he's of the more conservative side of
conservative
Japan
party.
right now.
Yeah.
And that kind of represents those people, but he has embraced the Japanese cultural, impressions for
The Cool
especially
Japan
for the
Initiative,
Rio.
right?
It's
Exactly,
the Cool
Cool
Japan
Japan.
Initiative.
Is that
It's-
still going?
It is still going on. There's the office that manages all these projects and stuff. I don't know if it worked as well as they would have hoped, but it definitely it shows you what they think their most valuable assets are in the eyes of other countries.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that anime has gotten much more, popular in the United States than it was, say, like in early 2000s when I was watching it more often. Like
right.
when I watched Dragon Ball Z and Yu Yu
Kenshin,
Hakusho
yeah.
and Rurouni Kenshin and
Yeah.
Samurai X, like when I was watching those shows and Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, like it wasn't popular at all. Well, it's hard to say that because the internet wasn't what it was. What
Let's
it
just
is
say
today.
we didn't go around high school telling everyone that we watched
I
anime
didn't
last
know
night.
anybody. I didn't know anybody except these guys that
Right.
watched anime. Nobody I knew. And that's kind of a false consensus thing. I understand that.
Right.
Who knows how popular it actually was? I mean, Cartoon Network was showing it.
But we at least
But-
know it wasn't widely talked about. It wasn't like this big thing
But-
that everyone liked.
I feel like when you go on YouTube now, this is just the number of people who have like anime portraits as their like thumbnail art, or it just seems to me like it's gotten a lot more popular, and maybe it was because of Cartoon Network airing those shows when we were in high school and stuff, and it kind of like started the momentum. That's about the time Cool Japan started, right?
Yeah, it became an idea in the mid 2000s ish.
Yeah, and that's basically when I was watching those shows.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit before the mid 2000s, maybe early 2000s.
If you guys,
but-
the Cool Japan Initiative, there's a video we did on it a couple months back. I think it's called Cool Japan.
yeah, Cool Japan.
If you search on our YouTube channel, on the Dark Pixel Gaming channel, that goes in depth with the specifics of that whole initiative. But really, what it is it's Japan trying to increase tourism in their country and increase the dominance of their cultural influence in other countries, because that is a very real thing that countries want. They want, so like the United States. Blue jeans become a huge popular thing in the U.S., and then you got other people wearing blue jean Levi Strauss jeans in Russia and other places. And there's the pop music or whatever There's a huge thing there. What's weird is I feel like Japan's lagging behind in that a little bit compared to like Korea
and China. Yeah, exactly. They're kind of losing their foothold in the Pacific East Asian region. They used to just be so dominant, but yeah, Korea with their music and their television has just blown up, and everyone watches Korean television. And China, of course, has blown up in every way you can think of. And so Japan is really, they're losing their footing.
I would say China still doesn't have that cultural influence that they're exerting outside of their own country.
They're just more
Korea,
like totalitarian.
Because Korea is what, 20 million people?
Oh, it's about 50 in the
50,
south.
Okay.
20 in the north.
South Korea, yeah. So, like, that's, for that size population, the influence they're exerting right now is actually pretty big.
In the Philippines, Taiwan, like, everyone watches Korean television. Even in Japan.
Yeah, right.
They watch Korean TV shows.
Yeah, I remember in Japan talking to people and all saying, all the best soap operas come from Korea.
Yeah.
At the time being like, okay, I guess that's kind of like, to me it was like, a lot of people in the U.S. watch Mexican soaps.
Mexican soaps, exactly, yeah. Latino.
But it's not really comparable in that way because the Mexican soaps tend to be low quality.
Right.
The Korean ones, I feel like...
They're actually very good shows,
Yeah. But...
And if you've ever watched Japanese television... It won't take you, other than if you're watching anime or something, but if you watch like their live TV shows and a lot of their, they have their game shows they're really
crazy,
popular for. It's unbelievable. No one can get behind that except them, basically.
It's
so different.
You will never see any other country adopt their style.
No.
Of any of their shows. It's so
wild.
busy and crazy and it's nuts.
So, anyways,
it's cool. It's cool.
It's just interesting to see video games because I don't think there's another country on earth that would do this.
No, I don't think so.
If the United
Japan.
States, was
has like Skyrim.
They have Skyrim.
And Master Chief runs out, and they just wouldn't do it. The fact, that's just hard to wrap your head around. It's so easy to accept. It's like, of course, Japan, Mario,
right.
But think about that. Like a video game character created within the last 30 years.
Yeah,
is like
early 80s, so a little longer, but
35
years
is like Japan's featured
is like
thing that they
the
do.
mascot for the country almost.
Yeah. It is
and
really
and how popular video games are in the whole world, yet even still only Japan would consider it to be their mascot.
What would the US's mascot be?
Oh,
Statue of Liberty?
We had the Olympics
Bald
not too long ago.
A bald eagle.
Bald eagle.
Come flying out.
Statue of Liberty. That's close.
So, anyways, that was interesting. So.
All right, we're going to move on to a lot of Final Fantasy 15 now. So if you don't like Final Fantasy 15...
Skip ahead about 40 minutes.
You're going to have to go way ahead. I have links in the description so you can click to go to the different topics.
Yeah.
But we're about to talk about a lot of Final Fantasy 15 now.
FFXV.
FFXV.
I've been hearing about this FFXV.
Yeah.
Coming out the same day as Final Fantasy 15. That's crazy.
You guys have not heard
They
of
both got postponed.
Philo Films?
He's
like a huge troll on YouTube here. He does like these fake game reviews for the YU Elder Scrolls V.
Yeah.
He's doing it on purpose, but he does it to a point where a lot of people don't understand, so he gets tons of hate. Anyways, he's funny. He watches videos, but he always talks about Assassin's Creed III, Elder Scrolls V. Like he doesn't. Anyways, it's funny. But Kingsglaive, which is the film spin-off of Final Fantasy 15, has the embargo was lifted this week, and I wouldn't say a bunch of reviews, like a handful of reviews.
There's been about 15 reviews.
There's 13 or 14 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah,
which is not a lot. I mean, a big film on Rotten Tomatoes will get 100 reviews or something like that, and this has got like 13. It's a little bit more than Advent Children got. Advent Children
didn't have a theatrical release,
right?
Though, right?
Yeah,
Advent Children didn't come out in theaters.
But you do have reviews from Variety, from Entertainment
LA
Weekly,
Times,
New York Times, LA Times.
A
few others. So you do have some of the major critics involved in reviewing the film,
and they all did not like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
About a 4.6
like
out of 10 average score, and then the Rotten Tomato score, which is 8%, I think, right now.
At the moment, yeah.
Which just, all that means is that 8% of the reviews are positive.
Are favorable.
Which means over 60.
Which means of the 14 reviews, 1.
So what's so weird about that system, and like I think what's kind of a problem with Rotten Tomatoes as a whole, is that like there was one review I read, and gosh, which one was it? I can't remember, but basically
We read
their
a
grade
couple.
was a C+.
Yes, and they
They
consider
said,
that negative.
but on Rotten Tomatoes, that's a negative review.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that person's scale is. Because to me, I'd hear C+ and be like, not bad,
slightly
not
above
good.
average,
If you're going
actually,
percentage-wise, you say you're about you're above a 75,
78, right?
which on
Right,
Metacritic
78.
you would be green. But
they
it depends.
counted it
They,
negative.
they should not have counted that negative.
But well, it depends.
But
Is
I
this
don't know
guy
what that
saying
person's scale is, right?
3 stars out of 5 is a C and
I
2
know.
stars is a D?
How do they convert
That's
these? I don't know.
dumb, but-
it doesn't make sense. But
it's weird. I don't
at least
get it.
one of those is a C+, being counted as negative.
So that could have been a positive.
Take that for what
It
you
could be
will.
a 15%.
I know with things like Cinema Score, if you get a B or lower Cinema Score, it's considered negative.
Really?
So
Just because everyone gives everything an A.
just because
basically.
people tend to go and see movies they like. So
Right, good
when
point.
cinema scores are given to movie, like I think we took a cinema score for Inception when we went to see Inception.
we
when
did.
that came out.
Right.
Yeah,
Remember
'cause
they gave us that
they were
thing
comparing the
beforehand
IMAX.
and then afterwards.
Yeah, I remember that.
They're like, "Why didn't you see the IMAX version?"
Right.
Explain.
We're like, I just drew a middle finger. Like, don't try and get me more
So
money out of
anyways,
me, dude.
it's complicated trying to attach numbers to things sometimes.
Yeah, so the response is negative, but not negative in the sense that everyone like hates the film.
I think they're
It's-
just confused.
People
by it, right?
feel the story is stuffed, like there's too
Yeah.
much in it, and that there's not enough of it like fully. Like there's too much going on without it being fully developed or explained that pushes people towards a video game that will give you further detail
Which
later.
is what it is. This whole movie is an ad.
what they want.
for the
It-
game.
it's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And this was actually on a video that I've made private after I put it up because I was being reactionary and I didn't like the voice I used, but I believe I raised a valid concern in that in media mix stuff like this is what you will run into.
Right.
You will run into creating something that is not self-contained. You have to see all the other parts of it in order to get the full picture. And hopefully the video game will not do that. Hopefully the video game
Yeah.
will be self-contained.
'Cause-
But this film is not. So
Usually with those kinds of efforts, it's like you have to pick where's the funnel pointing. So right, this should be the funnels pointing to the game when it's released, Final Fantasy 15.
yeah.
But so hopefully that game at the very least of all the things makes sense on its
Is
own
its own
merit,
thing.
stands on its
Right.
own legs.
Where you don't
But-
have to watch the movie or any
Yeah.
other stuff.
But
And-
but it does mean that each of these other components are not trying even to just be their own thing,
Right.
which is a huge problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've watched
Yeah.
the anime. I've watched all 4 episodes of it, and I thought it was really great because all it is essentially is just giving you an idea of who each of the main party characters are, and it gives you some background on where they come from.
That's cool.
And the thing is that I really liked it. It's super simple. It's like not trying to be an epic thing. It's just giving you an introduction to the characters. It's pretty endearing, I feel like, and it's nothing more than that. And so I really liked it. But one thing as I was watching it, like a thought I had was, if I had not seen this, would I get this information? Am I going to get this information about these characters in that game? And this is something that Thiago, which we'll go over in a minute, his impressions of the demo that he played at Gamescom,
Which is
was
supposed to be like
worried
the
about.
first half hour of
Yeah.
the game,
Yeah.
right?
He was kind of worried about this point is that we might not, at least from what he's played. And again, that's the first 30 minutes
Yeah,
of
it's
probably
not
a 70-hour game. So I'm sure it's totally speculative at this point to say that they're not going to develop the characters properly in the game. We have no grounds to say that on. But there is a concern that I think is valid that with all this media mix stuff around it, with the movie and the anime and all these other spin-off like phone games and stuff, especially with the one about King Regis, I'm really curious to know like how
That
much story will
pixel
be in
arty
that.
kind of thing.
Oh, that
Yeah,
little
like
thing, yeah.
what story will be in that? What will that tell us about the king as a character? With all of these things surrounding it, how much of that are you going to have to consume to get the full picture of the story?
And if it's anything like Kingdom Hearts, knowing that Tetsuya Nomura was directing this game until recently, well, a couple of years ago, yeah, you need all of that to understand the story. You need every spin-off game that has ever been made, every little series, everything you need to understand Kingdom Hearts. So I hope Final Fantasy 15 isn't like that. But I will say this about the director, the new director, Tabata, right?
Mm-hmm.
He, when they delayed the game, made this statement talking about how, we're concerned maybe some people don't have the internet, and that concern, or I don't know if it was a real concern, but that's the way he put it, is interesting given the fact they're taking this media mix approach. We can't see Kingsglaive. It's not in a theater anywhere near us. If we didn't have internet the way he's concerned about, we wouldn't have watched the anime either.
Yeah.
And so this game had better be self-contained if he's going to make that claim that they're so concerned about the people who don't have access to all these things.
That's true.
It sure dang better not need any of that. Because a lot of it, you have to pay $90 to get the Kingsglaive edition version of the game.
What is it? The complete or the...
Yeah. And obviously they're trying to sell you up.
What edition?
Collector's edition?
Collector's edition, I think.
There's a lot of really inhibiting things here that they're doing for him to be saying, we're trying to be as non-prohibitive as possible, or whatever.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Inclusive of every type of player.
It does feel like they've probably pushed the limits 100% to how far you can take this type of approach.
I think so.
I don't think there's an extra thing they could have
a TV show, a movie, a phone
game,
or
like
novella, arcade
that's true. They could have come out with an extra book.
Yeah, book.
Yeah, but it's definitely it's either hopefully it is not spreading things thin. Hopefully each of these is adding to the whole in a way that it doesn't matter if you don't have it, but it enriches your experience if you do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not they're not relying on this to make the plot make sense, but more just now I understand this character's motivation.
And that's how I feel about the anime. I felt that the anime was really good because that's all it was trying to be. At least that's what it seemed like to me. Yeah. It's like we're not trying to give you something that's required to see in order to get this or whatever. More it's just like enhancing the experience. You go a little bit more in depth. But I really hope at least elements of these stories are brought up in conversation or explored to some degree in the game, because I think it's really important to understand where these characters come from, because they all have a past with Noctis that make them care about him a lot, and they have good reasons to fight alongside him. And I hope that stuff is explored in the game. I expect it will be. That's my opinion. I just don't see that not happening in a big RPG like this.
Yeah, you know what's kind of like a good and a bad example of this sort of thing is like the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, where you can read The Lord of the Rings and it's great on its own. Mm-hmm. But if you have read the Silmarillion, all of a sudden you're like, your mind's blown. Depth. You're like, whoa, wow.
So much more depth.
Unfortunately, though, I think that might work a little better in a book format, just because like you can skip the 3-page long poem or whatever if you're just like, I don't get it. And it's not like essential to the plot. It was a character moment.
Yeah.
And so now that if you read the Silmarillion later and you come back, you're like, I get why Aragorn was telling this
about
poem
Beren
here.
And Luthien or
like, it makes sense, or he feels this connection, and this kind of parallels his own experience. And if they can do that, I think that it'll add value to the whole.
Depth. Exactly. Like the Silmarillion adds unprecedented depth to Lord of the Rings. Like
you're asking a lot of people, though, right? You're asking for a little more effort than is traditionally asked, especially from video games. Like, if Advent Children had come out before, it would have to be a different story. But if it had come out before Final Fantasy VII, you've got to see this to really totally get this, or that's kind of the situation we're looking at. Potentially. Hopefully not. It's possible that Final Fantasy 15 is very well self-contained. Right. I did hear, though, one reviewer of the film of Kingsglaive Final Fantasy 15 saying they were frustrated that they always heard about Noctis and never once saw Noctis really do anything.
In the movie.
But he's not in the film.
Yeah, they're like, you hear about him, but they're like, I get it. That's supposed to be a tease to make you want to play the game.
Right.
But it hurts the movie. So...
But in terms of the movie itself, I'm still excited to see it. Again, I don't have expectations for what it's going to be. And I expect, again, well, I just said I don't have expectations. What I mean to say is what I believe it will be is just like... I guess I never thought it was going to be this incredible film in and of itself, as much as it was just giving you like more solid background on what happens And okay, we can actually jump into Thiago's.
Well, we had Jay Cross had a little
Jay
sub
Cross.
thing.
Oh, you're
here,
right.
which-
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we do that, anyways, the Gamescom demo apparently begins you like shortly after Niflheim has come in and like basically attacked Lucius, which is the kingdom.
If you guys don't want to know anything about the beginning of Final Fantasy 15, by the way,
Oh yeah.
we will be talking about the beginning of Final Fantasy 15 as we understand it through the first half-hour gameplay that's available. So
Yeah.
if you're trying to avoid that, then we're going to be talking about that a lot for the next little bit.
But anyways, the movie tells the story that the game apparently doesn't necessarily show you in detail. So it's like this is all
the game
happening here,
starts
and the
after.
game starts after that.
Yeah.
So I kind of see it as almost like they go together, and this thing leads into
It
this
runs
thing.
straight into it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my whole point here is that, and the other thing I thought about when I started reading these reviews is that a lot of these film reviewers probably don't care about video games and probably aren't familiar with like the pacing or like sort of the way video game stories are delivered, which is pretty different from films. And that doesn't invalidate their criticisms. If you're going to make a film, there are
making a film.
certain
Yeah,
things
be a
that
film.
you really need
Yeah.
to do. Like you can't pack this much stuff into a movie and expect it to flow correctly. You know what I mean? And again, I haven't seen the movie, so I'm not judging it yet. I'm just trying to present kind of two sides of the argument. But I expect that I will probably like it more than the average film reviewer does because I'm more familiar, first of all, with this anime, second of all, with video games and the way that they're created and the way their stories are presented, and thirdly, with the series. I'm intimately familiar with the series.
I
So,
think there's a difference between someone viewing this movie who is planning on playing the game and someone who is viewing this movie with no intentions of playing the game.
Yeah.
That's got to be... I can see why it would be a frustrating experience for someone who never intends to play Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
But for somebody who does, it's probably a more enjoyable experience, I can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. This isn't like Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, for instance, which was made to be a standalone movie.
See, and that's a weird thing though when you talk about like with what J Cross mentioned, which movie games did it or which game movies did it right or wrong. Like Square Enix tried to get into making films and everyone's like, oh, that sucked, that movie was so bad. But Kingsglaive's like an 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. Advent Children is very lowly rated on Rotten Tomatoes, but those are not considered failures because they're like, oh, this is part of a different story. Don't review it as a movie. It's not a movie the way Spirits Within was. So, but it's every bit as poorly reviewed as Spirits Within was. But it wouldn't be considered a failure because Square Enix kind of like covered their butts. They
Like
kind of
a
like,
buffer
oh, the
kinda.
box office doesn't matter. It's a limited release, or like, this was never meant to be profitable. This is an ad for the game. And so it's almost a way for them to keep making movies the way they were doing
Right.
it when Hironobu Sakaguchi did it, but with still being able to tell their investors
Lower
like,
stakes
oh, don't
and-
worry. Yeah. The game will make up for the lost profits, and then it makes sense because the movie's called Final Fantasy 15 Kingsglaive, and the game's called Final Fantasy 15, so it doesn't matter if the movie wasn't profitable. But I feel like films are films, and they still kind of need to be judged on their own. Like, what if there was a Spirits Within game that accompanied the film? All of a sudden, the film, it wouldn't matter if it was low reviewed or a bad movie or not, right? Because there's a game that explains more.
Yeah, no, that's a good
And so
point.
you still
movies-
kind of need to do that.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I could totally understand anyone who was confused by Advent Children. Like,
Right.
Advent Children would be impossible to understand if you had not played Final Fantasy VII. Like, they did not do a good job of telling you all the information you needed to know to like get where this is going. It was made for fans of the game.
Right.
And if you understand that story going into it, it's like, okay, I can follow this. But if not, if you're just like New York Times guy, film reviewer, like, let's pop in Advent Children and watch that, I'd be like, what the fetch?
I was
is
dating a girl.
any of this
I was
mean?
dating a girl like 6 years ago, I think, and I was like, "Oh, there's a sweet movie, Advent Children. We should watch it."
She was probably so jacked.
And we
by
watched
that.
about 10 minutes of it, and I was like, this isn't. Let's not watch this movie. Like, she just question after question, and this is weird, and why is this happening? And
Yeah.
it just kind of, it's something I understood, so I have fond connections to. And even at the very beginning, there's kind of this thing right before the prologue that's like, anybody who's ever known and loved somebody within Final Fantasy VII, this is for you. Basically.
Yeah, it says that at the very beginning. That's true.
Is for you.
That's true.
And so to me, that speaks to me. I'm like, yes, but to her, it was like this really weird anime Japan movie that she didn't get. So, anyways,
and I expect that Kingsglaive will be similar.
Right.
Like it's gonna be one of those things, especially maybe even after you've played the game, you go back, it's like, oh
it's
yeah,
still
like,
quite not.
I get it. I totally get this, and
which is
why
sort of
people
weird.
Don't get it
because Kingsglaive is the first. Okay, no, that's not true. Brotherhood is the first piece of media,
right?
Yeah.
that anyone's been able to interact with that has anything to do with this entire project. Mm-hmm. So you've got, I don't know how many people have watched all of that by now, but that's a core group of people. And I think that, like you're saying, Mike, like from what I've only watched 2 of them. I haven't watched all 4 of them, but I think they do a good job for what they are. But like you get into like a movie that you're going to put out in theaters, meaning like I guess you're still depending on fans to come and see it, but people are still going to show up at the cinema and be like, oh, what's that? That sounds interesting or whatever,
totally.
and then go see it.
Yeah.
And so like it's you can't juggle both audiences at the same time, but also Kingsglaive. We already know that it's like the Kingdom of Lucius and Niflheim, the Empire, and this magic, and they have like cell phones still, but they also can like warp with this sword technology.
Yeah,
they have like we know a lot going into it already. It's impossible to discount us already like knowing those things. I read one reviewer that was saying like, oh man, their freaking sword warping was so annoying because it made it impossible to tell like what was going on.
Oh,
and
that would be hard.
Who knows? Maybe that person just doesn't watch a lot of
probably not into
films.
Action films or anime
and video games.
Video games.
Abilities like that, I think, are almost common.
But in a film, when
now.
you have somebody warping, if you don't do it
can
right,
be
it can
really
be
disorienting.
Yeah.
So I don't know when we're going to get to see this. Probably not till the beginning of October when it comes out on Blu-ray, or maybe not even till Final Fantasy 15 comes out. If we do, because
I'm probably going to order that collector's edition today,
so then that means we're not going to get to see this movie for ourselves until the end of November, or basically last day of November.
Last day of November.
So what?
I'm sure somebody will upload it to YouTube for a few hours.
I have to say I am not surprised by
me
reviews.
neither.
Not in the sense that I thought it would be bad, but in the sense that I'm just not surprised that the critics don't get it. And it's weird because
that's what Suicide Squad people say.
Exactly, right? There's a lot of the comic book movie people that say like they don't get it. They don't freaking get it.
Yeah.
And
that's I think that's valid. Like I don't get it. And it's because I don't read comics.
Right.
I don't care to read comics.
You didn't care who Deadshot was 5 years ago, and you weren't like, oh, Deadshot's
waiting for him to be in a movie.
Exactly. Yeah. And in any case, like it's really hard for reviewers to I don't want to use the word objective because you can't be objective.
What's tricky though, I feel like these reviewers could actually be the most objective perspectives on the films themselves. As
just a film.
Because they
just a film.
They didn't watch the event, the Final Fantasy event at the beginning of the year.
They didn't get
They haven't been watching any of the demos. They haven't seen any of that stuff. They're going in completely fresh. So that's and then for anyone working on those films, they obviously were in the middle of all that too. So it's really hard to ever know, like, that's why you need test audiences, right? But it's really hard to ever know what just someone who's never seen any of this before is going to think.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, and so, like, that's true. You get that, like, fresh perspective. I'm just looking at this for what it is versus all of us who are fans who are going to consume all the things around it.
Right.
You know, and what we think. And,
even the pinball
and what
game.
we're willing to forgive because of the accompanying media.
Yeah. Anyways.
Oh, man.
Well, that ties in. J. Cross wanted to know, because we're talking about video game movies.
Yeah.
What video game movies did it right? And honestly,
I don't think there's one.
I can't
think there is one.
I love Advent Children, so I mean,
I
we're
think
talking about Advent
actually
Children.
fun to watch.
I
love going back to the world of Final Fantasy.
I liked Advent Children. I loved Advent Children Extended.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the only version I think I've seen.
Blu-ray one.
And when I say I liked Advent Children, I use that like almost as it was like barely above what I would call average. It's like I liked it. I liked it. I didn't. It's not that. It's not bad. That's kind of what I thought.
As a movie, I mean, whatever.
There were.
It's just cool.
There were elements of
Cloud
it.
and Sephiroth.
There were elements of it I really didn't like, And the villains were the first part of it. I didn't like the villains the first time I saw that movie. And I didn't like that Cloud was kind of going through the same character arc a second time. When being used to that as an idea and then watching the Blu-ray extended version, I felt like it made way more sense. They added some small key scenes that like really, really just put it together for me. So, and then they added all that blood when Sephiroth is like jacking Cloud, like stabbing him like a million times.
Yeah,
Actually,
awesome.
I think that shot was entirely added. The whole scene is just like stabbing him like a million times, bam, bam, like through his arm. You see it like go through his like entire arm. I was like, anyways, they really made that fight scene a lot better by just adding some stuff. And anyways, I loved that version of the film, but.
Wreck-It Ralph was pretty good.
That's true. That is a video game.
I mean, loosely, but
Well, it's not
it's not a bad movie. It's a good movie.
based on a Wreck-It Ralph game that people had been fans of, right?
The Tool, Fix-It Felix.
Fix-It
and Wreck-It
Felix,
Ralph
that
was the bad
he's
guy.
the bad guy.
In Fix-It Felix, which is this old arcade game.
Yeah.
But I mean, and that's the dumb part for me when you get into like, which video game movies are good. I mean, obviously we played Final Fantasy VII a lot, so Advent Children we enjoyed, but like you kind of have to do movies like Wreck-It Ralph that aren't really video game movies. They're animated kids movies that are fun and they just have a video game theme, and maybe a few references to video game characters, and that's what Hollywood can currently do. And well with video games is just kind of have subtle hints. They can't make a full feature based on just the game. It's not working.
The thing that's so hard, and the reason why I don't feel it works, is because many of the very most popular video games, Skyrim, Zelda, Halo, have a main character that is a blank slate.
Right.
There's no character development to speak of. And the purpose of that is to let the player assume that role, to imprint themselves on the character. And when you have done that, and then you come out with a definitive version of the character that you're going to try to give character development, because in a film you can't have a silent character.
Not since 1929.
Not since Wall-E. Not since Wall-E.
Sorry, I was going to silent film. I guess Wall-E works.
Like, if it's part of the movies, like, you know what I mean? In Wall-E, he's essentially a robot by himself. And anyways, it works for that story. It wouldn't work in Skyrim where everyone else in the world talks. And
why don't you talk?
Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that everybody has their own idea of who the character is in many of these very extremely popular video game franchises, because it's part of you. You are that character. And then when you make a definitive version of it and present that to people, it's like, that's not how I imagine that person was.
99% of people are going to say, yeah, that's not what I thought.
And you even get that...
Books have a similar problem.
Yeah, they do. And even games like from before voice acting have that same problem, even if the character is fully fleshed out. I just disagree with Cloud as a spoken character. I don't think that guy's voice works. I don't think that he plays the character the way that the character was presented in the video game. I feel like he's 100% or only took one aspect of that character and just embodies that completely. He's just made this one very small percentage of the game where Cloud had this really big personal struggle of identity, and it's just like made that into who Cloud is, a one-dimensional version of him that is only that.
And the question is, like, the one-dimensionality is a good point. The question is that why, like, film critics tend to hate these movies across the board?
Yeah.
And I feel like most film critics tend to be older, and they're not people that even play video games at all. Are these even reasons why these people don't like those movies? You know what I mean? Like, I understand why a fan would be like, oh, Link shouldn't sound that way. You know, because Nintendo's going to be doing this very soon here. Like, we're going to have
they're getting into
most likely fully animated Zelda film coming up at some point in the near future, if not other Nintendo properties. So, I mean, we're gonna freaking see like how they tackle that problem. But
and we're currently seeing how Square Enix is portraying their own characters, right?
Yeah.
And even the ones who made the games and they have trouble with this. Even the people who understand everything way better than we could ever, have issues when it comes to making films about their own game,
a movie,
their own freaking game.
Yeah, like
there's certainly something very different about telling a story in a video game form and telling a story in a film form. That it's so much more compact.
Yeah, games you can add so much more.
You've got to do more in less time. And when games have like all this time to do so there's just jammed
like Persona
with
4.
stuff. Yeah, it's like just jammed with stuff. So many events, so many things that happen. You tell this massive story, and you have all this time to do it in. And here, your story's just got to be much smaller.
Well, so at the same time, like it's hard to tell why a certain number of fans of a game like that game specifically. Like maybe some of them like this part of it. Maybe they like the control system or the way it feels or the feeling it gives them of freedom or whatever with how they get to play the game. And maybe there's other people that like the other systems that are involved in the game, or maybe the visuals, the art palette or something like that.
Yeah.
And then maybe there's but so movies have to go on the story strictly. Yeah. I mean, you've got the art direction and everything involved too, but movies it's the story. Like if the story is bad, there's not a movie around as a bad story that does well, because movies are, for what they are, they're kind of long. You sit there for 2 hours, and to listen to a bad story for 2 hours, it's like, screw
That's true.
But video games, even with a bad story, there are video games that succeed with bad stories. Right. And I think it's because part of the appeal there is because of how the developers got the feel of the game, the mechanics, the physics, the things that just make it feel grounded or right, or like it just works. Like the Binding of Isaac, like people freaking love playing the Binding of Isaac, like for hundreds of hours, because it just has this really good feel to it. But if Hollywood were to come out and say like, all right, sweet, people dig the Binding of Isaac, let's make a Binding of Isaac movie, it would be like, oh,
be kind of a joke.
You're gonna hit all the wrong reasons. You're not gonna be able, even if you tried, to hit the reasons why people do like it. You know what I mean? Like
in a film,
I feel like there's always
in a film,
I feel like there's just aspects of video games that are impossible to translate over.
Yeah.
A well-balanced battle system that rewards you for tinkering and customizing and stuff like good RPGs do.
How do you make...
You can't, you can't do it. So I mean...
Because that's such a huge part of the experience of a video game, is how you interact with it. Yeah. And you lose that entirely. Now you're just an observer. And is the story now strong enough to be compelling without the interactivity of it?
Right.
And I would say, I mean, just to be blunt, like most video games, I don't think tell stories that are compelling enough to stand on their own.
Yeah,
Some of them do. I think they could be good movies if done by people who were passionate about it to begin with.
But not the developers who made it.
Yeah. Probably. So like Prince of Persia. For instance, I remember the director, who I think was the director of Harry Potter, like 6 and 7.
Oh, 6. I used to know his name. I don't anymore.
If not, then it might have been Harry Potter 5. He was one of the directors for one of the Harry Potter films.
David.
And I think he's a great director. So why was this movie so bad?
Newell.
Oh, is he the one of the new ones, or
what movies has he directed?
Tell me more about yourself, Mike Newell. With Man in the Iron Mask.
Pivotal Point.
Oh wait,
sick.
That was the TV one.
Did he do any of the? Why did I think that he was a Harry Potter?
They've had 4 directors.
Maybe he was a producer on it or something.
Maybe. Oh, here's the filmography. Yeah, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
Okay, the 4th one.
Oh yeah.
So that wasn't the best Harry Potter movie of them. I think it's still good, but I think it's of all the Harry Potter movies, that's probably the one that's liked the least. But he directed Man in the Iron Mask, which is a great movie. I mean, he's not a bad director. But that movie's terrible. And I remember reading some interviews where he said he never even played the game. He didn't care about the game. Like,
that would be Peter Jackson not reading Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's unfathomable.
Right. And that's I think the biggest reason why none of these video game movies have been any good, is because we don't have any like directors in the industry right now who I think are like super.
I've gotta say Duncan Jones.
Duncan Jones,
and Warcraft.
And then he did Warcraft.
See Warcraft, so I don't. I've got to see it now because I like Duncan Jones, but
apparently
Apparently, Warcraft's
video game
not good.
adaptation
I don't
wasn't
know.
any better than anyone else's.
I don't know.
But
But at the same time,
again-
there are complications that come with dealing with any large project. If you're a filmmaker, the
a
studio
large
screws
studio.
with things. Even good
Yeah.
directors get thrown
Well,
under the
that's
bus.
that's what
stuff like
happened
that,
with
so.
That's true.
Suicide Squad, though. I mean, like
yeah.
the reaction to Batman vs Superman scared Warner Brothers so bad that they took the guy's original movie and they just re-edited it into a totally different movie. And now
Yeah.
Jared Leto's pissed, and like everyone involved is like, what the fetch? Like
Yeah,
the publisher has so much power to alter the original vision. And who knows to what extent that was done on World of Warcraft.
Right. Who knows?
But we do know another director. What was his name? He was a smaller director. He made that Fantastic Four movie.
Oh.
yeah.
He came outright and said the studio
He did Chronicle.
fetched me.
Chronicle, right?
He had
Chronicle, yeah,
directed
that guy.
Chronicle.
Yeah.
He was like, the studio fetched me on this. Like,
Yeah.
just absolutely
Which,
destroyed this
to come out
project.
and say that
Yeah.
means your career is almost essentially
Exactly.
over.
Yeah.
So
Never
for
again.
him
he
to say
doesn't
this
he
is
doesn't even
remarkable.
care to work in Hollywood anymore if you're going to come out and be that blunt about it. And I don't blame him. Like if that's what they're going to do to your movie, because they tested it with a few audiences who might not be familiar with the source material and they didn't like it. It's like, we have to change it now. Where's your power as a creator? Where's your vision?
But
can't be retained. You know.
That brings up a good point that it's all about knowing your audience, and
Yeah.
you can't blame like the top movie critic for Variety for not being in your audience. Unfortunately, they're a top
Right.
critic on Rotten Tomatoes, but you weren't even trying to get them to begin with, right?
Right.
As long as you know your audience and you hit your audience, like horror films are reviewed very poorly generally
Yeah,
on
that's
Rotten
correct,
Tomatoes,
yeah.
but there are people out there that live for that genre.
Every new one
and they see all of them,
Yeah.
and they're way into it.
Yeah.
So, there's just, I feel like video games kind of parallels that a little bit. There
I
are
think
people
that
that
sounds
live
about right.
for it, and the people making these films, they know we're going for these people.
Yeah.
Like with Duncan Jones, I've seen a lot of people tweet at him on Twitter saying that they loved the film,
Like
and
a
thanks for
lot
making
of
this,
people,
and
yeah.
you spoke to me and my experience when I played Warcraft in the late 90s or whatever.
Yeah.
So...
I have one last thing that's been like in my head about this is that we're comparing obviously book adaptations. You can't have a book with a bad story. All books have to have good stories because that's all it is. You're reading a story. And that's
Right.
Yeah. But
Dude, you could have a movie with great visuals but a bad story.
Exactly.
Game with great gameplay with bad
But a
story.
book has to have a good story. But what's interesting is movies based on games. Basically, the only people that like the movies are the people who love the game, right? Whereas movies based on books, people who like the books are constantly like, "Oh, the book's better than the movie." I've heard that a million times.
Yeah.
People actually kind of resent these movies made out of their books sometimes, often,
Right.
a lot.
Right.
Because it doesn't do it for them. So it is very interesting that people who like the books don't like the movies about the books, but people who like games love the movies about the games. And I don't know if it's just there aren't enough
I
movies
see what
being
you're saying.
made about games, so they just want
Yeah,
something.
just-
And for books,
It's
there's
not being
tons.
fulfilled.
Well, it's
or
like...
if there is a weird kind of thing here where it's like, I don't know, just like, I don't know.
like the
There's a
Aerostorm,
disconnect
the
somewhere.
Aerostorm thing. There's people that freaking love movies about dragons.
Oh,
there aren't
yes.
that many movies about dragons. They
Yeah.
want their dragon movies. They'll take whatever they
There's
can
only
get. Yeah,
one or two a year, yeah.
Even
Pete's
if the
Dragon,
dragon's in
uh,
it for about 10
1
seconds
minute, and then-
on screen at the beginning, and then there's no more dragons.
Yeah,
no more dragons. They got their dragon now.
It's in the trailer.
So, anyways, to answer your
All right.
question there, that was J Cross'
J.
question.
Cross.
I
Which video games did it right?
probably
It's just hard
for
to
me, I would
say.
say what I've enjoyed is Advent Children.
That's probably me
And
too.
like Mike was saying, I think that's the only version I have seen though. But the
Blu-ray. Yeah.
The Blu-ray
the
extended version.
Yeah.
I think it's really
I
good.
can't remember because when was the first time I saw that movie?
It came out in 2005, so
See,
you were
and
probably
I
you
was
were
in
in Japan
I
then.
didn't see it.
Yeah,
And then
the Blu-ray was like
the
08,
Blu-ray
maybe?
was when I was living at your house. I think it was
maybe 9 or 10.
09 or
I think that was the first version I
Okay.
saw.
yeah
Was that Blu-ray version.
2009.
2009.
2009.
Actually, I don't remember if it was 10 or 09, but anyways, it doesn't matter.
Around there.
Okay, let's jump into the Final Fantasy 15
If you
Gamescom
fast
stuff.
forward because of the spoilers, we have yet to actually talk about the game.
Sorry.
So now we're talking about
Now
the
we're
game
talking
Final
about
Fantasy
Final
15.
Fantasy 15.
Now, I am also trying to avoid spoilers for the game, so I haven't watched any of that Gamescom footage. The
There's
hour,
like the first
the
hour,
hour
yeah.
long,
Yeah.
like the first hour of the game or whatever. I have not watched that, and I'm not going to. And while I might know some of the things that happen, even though I haven't seen Kingsglaive, even though I haven't played this demo or seen the demo, I suspect, because I think it's obvious at this point, that Lucius is going to get attacked and taken over, and that the game will take place with Noctis being in sort of this like state where his kingdom is annexed, and he was on his way to meet his fiancée at this kingdom, and he's sort of in this limbo state where like he can't go anywhere. He's being pursued. Right, so we know King Regis is going to die at this point, don't we? Like, I haven't seen either of these
That's
things.
what they keep saying. His power is waning. That he's on his way out.
Yeah,
That he's the only reason that they were able to protect the kingdom, and so
he's voiced by Sean Bean. Like,
Yeah.
that's all you need to
He's
know.
going to die.
He's going to die, right? I haven't seen it. I just know that's going to happen,
Right.
right? So the spoilers we're going to talk about here, there aren't actual spoilers because I haven't actually seen it. I'm just suspecting.
Right, but Tiago has, and that's part of
Right. So,
Yeah.
about.
yeah.
and he, because I told him that I avoid watching for spoilers, so he was pretty careful to explain some stuff, and mostly what he explained was gameplay features.
Yeah.
But
He did say it had a chapter 0.
yes.
So
So
chapter 0 that is like kind of kicking you farther down in the story
right.
that you get a little bit of time with, and then it goes back.
Well, I think that the chapter 0 is like the very small condensed version of Kingsglaive. Like it kind of is.
They're
going
showing
over,
all Noctis
like,
and Kingsglaive.
not Noctis.
So you're not playing as Noctis in chapter 0.
No, I think chapter 0 is Regis, like, and the fall of the kingdom.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then you go to Noctis after that. But they do show, he was talking about some sort of transitional scene, and this is one of the things I was most excited about, where King Regis and Noctis are kind of, they have a discourse before Noctis leaves to go meet his fiancée. Not meet her for the first time, but you know what I mean. They're getting married.
Meet up with her, I guess.
Anyways, and what he said was that he really loved the subtlety and the nuance of those performances between the two, because they were speaking certain words, but you really got a sense of something underlying beneath that, like Noctis respecting his father, but there being definitely a certain level of like disconnect between them, or some unresolved issue.
What king in any story has ever understood their son? I gotta say.
I don't know. I can't think of one.
It doesn't happen. It's never happened.
But he was talking about voice performance and facial animation being key to kind of getting this understanding of what their relationship is, despite the words being spoken. And I think that excites me a lot because, in my opinion, you did not get very much of that in Final Fantasy XIII. In Final Fantasy XIII, when a character was mad, you saw it in their face, you saw it you heard it in their voice, and the words told you it. It's like everyone always expressed exactly what they were thinking, saying all the time. There was nothing that like felt, and again, it's been many years since I've played this, so I'm not saying like every single piece of dialogue in the entire game is this way. I'm saying as a general rule, it felt to me like there wasn't a lot of nuanced performances in that game. It felt like everyone was very face value. You knew exactly what they were thinking and feeling because they were saying it out loud. And again, because I know you're typing in your keyboards right now, I'm not saying every line of dialogue was delivered that way in the whole game, or that there weren't good moments. There were good moments. There's one moment in particular where Snow and Lightning sort of like, for the first time, kind of reconcile. I remember that being a really great moment, and where I started to kind of like Snow after I had hated him so much at the beginning. There are good moments in the game. I'm saying most of the time, this is how it felt to me. So I'm hoping that that kind of subtlety is going to be really common in this game, and that we will get layers to the characters that are told to us not only with what they're speaking, but with how they're how their faces are animated, with the way they say something, with their actions.
I feel like what we've already seen, that there's a lot of those campfire moments. It seems like that's going to happen frequently in the game. And I think those are great opportunities for that type of thing. They're allowing for it to happen. Instead of just going action to action to action. They're allowing for, there are downtime moments that we know are going to happen in the game.
It'll be
just people chilling with each other. And
the equivalent to sea salt ice cream eating in Kingdom Hearts, where they all go up to the clock tower and they're eating ice cream and they're talking to each other. Which I thought those were some of my favorite moments in the Kingdom Hearts series, and that was all in that 365 over 2, or 359, or whatever it is.
358.
358 over 2 days. My favorite moments in the entire Kingdom Hearts series come from that game, and a lot of them were while they were there just eating sea salt ice cream and talking to each other. So I'm hoping this game has a lot of that. And from what Thiago is saying, they did a really good job of establishing that right at the very beginning between Noctis and Regis.
Seems like in this game, instead of up on a rooftop eating ice cream, it's going to be at a fire. At night.
Eating weird
at the
food.
Fireplace.
So that's good. I'm looking forward to that. He also got, one thing that he expressed concern about, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the media mix, is that when we made the jump into kind of the main party, you're playing the game as like the main guys now, he didn't really get us a good sense of character development between the other people in the party. And he expressed some concern that maybe they're going to be relying on people to have watched Brotherhood, the anime, to know this before going into it. I think it's probably too early to say that for sure, and he realizes that as well. There's a lot of game to be played after the first 30 minutes where they can establish this, but again, he voiced that concern after playing the demo. Again, I have not seen the demo personally. I'm just going off of what he's told me. That's kind of what he talked about in terms of story, but then he went into gameplay mechanics, and the one thing that I think is the most disappointing thing to me about Final Fantasy 15 so far is that you have essentially no control over the other characters. You only control Noctis, and you can do like these sort of dual tech attacks, or like where you like signal a character and they do like an attack together. But aside from that, there are no commands you can give to them. I think I forgot to ask him this, but I don't believe you can even really go into like the menu and set up like...
It sounded like he was saying you couldn't do that.
Yeah, where you can't... Like in, let's say, Secret of Mana, for instance, or Sega Genesis 3, you can go in and like tell the AI like heal often, or
type of
stick to melee attacks, or use magic attacks. You can kind of like give them some range of customizability where you can tell them what kinds of things you want them to do. It's limited, but at least you feel like you have some control.
Or a lot of the Tales games will do that too.
Yeah, and the other part of it is that Secret of Mana and Sega Genesis 3 allowed you to play with another person. So it was, when you're not playing with someone co-op, you know, you at least could tell or give some command to the AI-controlled characters. And while it took total control away from you, which is what menu-based, turn-based RPGs gave you, you at least had something. And in this game, it appears that there is nothing like that. The AI has complete control over the other characters. And in the Deuce-K demo, what I've heard is that people were saying they were really dumb. They would die really easily. They wouldn't heal you when you needed to be healed. And that kind of thing, to me, is a bit concerning. I really hope that the AI is very smart in the final version of the game, because otherwise you feel like so much of what makes traditional JRPGs compelling, which is you have these roles between 4 or 5 characters or 3 characters or whatever it is. This person's a healer, this person does this person does this, and you can say when to be healed. I need you to heal me now. I need you, you get control over that. And if I'm sitting there fighting, it's like, oh, I need heal, and I run over to my healer, or the healer in the party, and he doesn't heal me when I need it, that would just be, like, unbelievably frustrating to me. That would be a huge stain on the experience for me if that ended up being the case.
Along those lines, it was interesting that he was saying that there were some key battles where you could come up with a plan, a strategy, before you go in.
Yes.
Which can alleviate some of that. Obviously,
Yes.
you need some emergency heal, something you didn't anticipate happen.
Right.
That's one thing, but coming up with a plan of attack is very interesting. Because in real life, you can't, you got to rely on that guy to do whatever. But if it was a plan that you had from the beginning, that's an interesting aspect to the strategy.
Yeah, so he was saying that he didn't know what triggered it. It would just happen what seemed randomly to him. But maybe there is a trigger. He just wasn't able to really determine how it worked. But every once in a while the characters would come to him and say, "Hey, here's this group of enemies over here. Let's plan ahead what we're going to do." And you could almost set up ambushes, so to speak. That seemed really cool, and it would help, I think, if you could make those plans ahead of time and get some kind of strategy, or at least come up with some kind of level of control how this battle is going to play out, even though you have AI, allies.
Something I think a lot of game developers may overlook when it comes to AI allies, especially when you can't control them, is that affects their character.
Yeah.
When you're constantly yelling at this guy because he's being dumb, but he's supposed to be the smart one, or he has to, his behavior in battle has to reflect the actual character, whether or not he gives a fetch about you or even understands, if you're about to die and he's not healing you, then that kind of shows that maybe he's oblivious to your problems. And anyways, kind of, there's this whole meta level to it that can kind of kill your story and kill your characters if it's bad.
Creating unnecessary pressure. Well, that goes along the line.
We kind of learned to separate, this is the AI, this isn't the game, but I don't like making that distinction in video games.
Yeah, that goes along the same lines as I was reading an interview with Shigeru Miyamoto, and he was saying that he was, before they were working on the first Donkey Kong, he was analyzing why people keep paying money to play arcade games. Why they don't just play it once and go whatever. And he said he determined that it was because they were blaming themselves for not getting to the next level or for not succeeding. If they blamed the game, they would move to another game. They would stop playing that game. So he said that's why the game design has to foster, when there's failure, you naturally have to blame yourself for it and not say, well, the game did this thing, it was unfair.
Otherwise you'll stop.
Yeah, and that principle still holds true today. If the game is the reason, and if you're able to blame, or if people are tending to blame the game, then you're not getting an optimal experience, and that's what these types of systems can lend themselves towards. He's just saying, I would have been fine if this guy hadn't, and that's you blaming the game because you did everything right, but you got punished for it anyway. So that's where it's dangerous, right?
Now, here's another thing about that I thought about as you were saying that is that according to him, the magic system in the game is pretty similar to Final Fantasy VIII in a way, in that you go to these draw points where you draw an essence, and then you basically bottle those into items. So spells are kind of like items, and that's how it was in the Platinum demo, is that I had 10 lightning spells, and I equipped that as a consumable item and threw them essentially at the enemies. And so if that's the case, then cure spells could probably be given to any character. So, maybe it's not gonna, the roles will not be designated in quite the same way that you would expect from a traditional Final Fantasy game where this guy's a healer, this guy's this guy's this. Maybe everybody could fulfill any role essentially, but I mean if they have base stats, I'm assuming that this character would be better at healing. It would do more because his spirit stat or whatever is higher than this character, so you'd want to give that person the cure spells. But if they don't use them at the right time... Anyways, we've kind of already gone over that. But the magic system apparently is very much like Final Fantasy VIII, where they're consumable and you go to draw points to gain them. So I found that pretty interesting. Definitely no junctioning or anything like that. You don't then take that magic and then put it into your strength to make it higher or anything like that. It's just the only similarity is that you draw them from these points. Yeah. Another thing he mentioned that I thought was pretty interesting is he couldn't really seem to figure out if this was truly random battles that were coming upon him or if he just didn't see the enemies ahead of time. But every once in a while, a red circle would appear over him and there was an alert that he was in danger. And he could run really fast out of that zone and escape. But every once in a while he'd be running and then just this big red circle would come up. And almost as if it was an element of like random battles, like you're running around and then you just get attacked or like, but it gives you a chance to run away from it first. I don't know how I feel about that, if that's true. I'd rather it not do that at all, because I'm trying to get somewhere.
Be able to see the enemies.
Yeah,
right?
I'm trying to get, and that's still an element of it. You can
Right.
see enemies
So
out
with
there,
this
and
whole
you can
red
go
thing,
engage them.
I don't know,
But
it's
if this thing is constantly interrupting me, making me run out of a zone, if I'm trying to get somewhere, I could see that being pretty annoying. So again, he couldn't really determine exactly how that works, but that was an interesting element. We'll see how that ends up being in the real game. Was there anything else from what he was talking about that I wanted to bring up that I thought was interesting? He was saying,
talk about the clothes. But a lot of them kind of like seemed out of character.
Yeah,
a lot of the options
like a
were
lot
like,
of,
why would you wear this? Why would you look like
there are
this?
a lot of optional, like, just cosmetic sort of things where they're just wearing blue jeans and baseball caps and weird stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen some of them now in screenshots, and it does appear kind of weird to me. I don't know why you would wear that stuff instead
the
of...
suits DLC where they're even more decked out.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, and it's...
Yeah. So, I mean... Anyways, he did say the frame rate. That's what we got to talk about. And this is probably the reason why they've delayed it, is he said the frame rate was so bad in battles that it would often get down to 0 frames.
It would freeze for a full second.
It would entirely freeze for a full second. And he said this happened to him multiple times in battles. So the frame rate was an issue for him, and I'm assuming that's the main reason why they've delayed the game 2 months, is to try and fix that.
Frame rate's a huge problem in an action battle system.
Yeah.
It is hard.
Timing's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully they get that worked out.
Not just for the PS Neo.
Not just, for the PS Neo version, but on the regular
Yeah.
PS4, which is the reason I assume that they're doing this, is to make sure people on the original PS4 won't have this problem. And then... I think that was mostly what we wanted to go
He was
over.
talking about equipable stuff, basically. You essentially have like an accessory you can equip, but there's not really like
there's no armor
per se.
There's no armor.
Yeah.
And that leads into what we were talking about with the cosmetics. Like, none of that affects your defense or anything like
Just
that. Your
wear what
clothes,
you wanna
you
wear.
wear whatever you want to wear. Clothes, there's no armor in the game, no chest piece, It's you have an accessory slot and a weapon slot. And that's about it. And you can assign them to the D-pad, the weapons, so you can have different weapons and spells on the four options
like in the demo
that you can kind of use to, hotkey or switch between. So you can have multiple weapons, and the weapon kind of transforms, right? That's kind of the whole idea. But anyways, there's a weapon slot and an accessory slot. Who knows? You could get maybe more accessory slots. Maybe 2 or 3 could become eventually, open to you. But no armor in the game. So we'll see how that works. I'm kind of disappointed by that, but we'll see how that works.
It might make sense. I mean, armor, unless you're wearing something really heavy, you're not stopping a bullet, basically. Like, what you wear.
Yeah, in a modern world, maybe it fits better,
feel.
right?
Of course, you probably still take 30 bullets before you die in the game.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
What are you going to do?
Okay, we got to move on here to Paul of Tree.
More user submitted stuff.
Yeah.
Wanted to know what we think about a lot of Japanese games. How much time do we got?
We got about 25 minutes before the exact time where we have to be on the call.
We're going to have to fly through this. Apologize for that, but I think we can anyways.
So probably 20 minutes.
How do you feel about games like Final Fantasy 15? Well, a lot of Japanese games, specifically adopting more of a Western-style combat system.
It's fine as long as they don't abandon the other style combat system altogether.
Yeah. That and also as long as they can hopefully eventually come up with a good system for letting me change characters in the middle of battle.
In a Western system.
That's the only thing about turn-based RPGs that I really loved. It's not the turn-based. It's not the fact that I get to wait for your turn and wait for my turn. That's not the part about it that I liked.
Right.
The part about it I liked was the sense of controlling a party. I got a party of people. They all have different roles. I set up what their roles are. I strategize before entering the battle what this person would do, what this person would do, and what this person would do. I set that all up, and now I execute it in the battle, and I get control of all of them. They have not found a way that I have seen yet to get both the sense of control over roles and an action-style, real-time fighting that works well for me. I've not seen that happen yet. I am hoping that Final Fantasy VII Remake will be the first to do that. That's my... I'm not setting an expectation for that.
If they don't,
I'm not setting an expectation for that. I'm just hoping that game will finally deliver something like that.
Honestly, the only control method I think that's been successful at controlling multiple people in an action like real-time system is stuff like StarCraft, Warcraft, where you're controlling armies at a time.
Yeah,
But it's like this guy, they're there. Yeah, real-time strategy.
That's the thing to mention about Final Fantasy 15, though, is it does have almost this pause system called the wait system, where you can pause the game and like give commands or like at least target different enemies. You can pause the battle system and determine what you want to do if you put it on wait instead of active. And that's good. Now just let me switch to the other character while it's paused and then resume. And have that person have a distinct role that I then do the thing I want to do with him and then switch to this person and do his thing. I'm serious. Developers, this is what you got to do. I am fine with real-time fighting. I'm fine with action-oriented battle systems. I prefer them. I just also want control of the whole party. So that's my feeling on that.
Yeah. That's about right.
I think
I
if
just
you're going to
hope
really
the
just have
Japanese one doesn't
one character, it should just basically just be one character.
Yeah.
There's no reason that you're always out there with a whole team of people all the time.
If you're going to have a
Sometimes
team,
you're just a guy.
I got to be able to play as the whole team. If I'm going to be one person, I'll be one person.
And that's where maybe, and that's the difference. You have to relinquish a little control here. But a lot of like online RPGs have you can still do the party system. You're not controlling everyone, but at least you can talk to them.
Yeah.
And you can set up your team ahead of time. I think that's the closest we have now.
That's true.
To that kind of system. Yeah. But if you have Leroy Jenkins on your team, he wants to do his own thing, then nothing you can do, folks.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, OJ Simpson and Knuckles was asking us if we could go over what we think the worst Zelda games are.
Now I haven't played every single Zelda game.
I've played as... Okay, which ones have I not played?
So as a kid, I really didn't enjoy the Link's Awakening Game Boy game.
No, yeah.
And I because at the time for me it was too difficult. I haven't played that game in a really long time, but I had come to that from playing Link to the Past.
Okay,
And because I actually played Link to the Past before I played Link's Awakening, and I really loved Link to the Past, but Link's Awakening frustrated me because it just didn't feel like as complete of an experience. But I recognize that that's actually a good Zelda game. I just haven't played it at a point where I have the skill level to meet it yet, which would be within any time in the last 20 years. Yeah. So, growing up, that was always my least favorite one.
I gotcha, yeah.
I haven't played Link's Awakening at all. I believe that's the only main Zelda game I've not played. This new Triforce, whatever it was, Heroes.
Yeah, Triforce Heroes.
I haven't played that. But I'm saying, of the mainline games, I've played them all, I think, except Link's Awakening. I am one of those people that actually really likes Zelda 2. I think it had really cool ideas, and I was a really big fan of that game. But I think the DS Zelda games are probably my least favorite. Again, I don't think they're bad games. I especially liked the second one, which was Spirit Tracks. That's the one where you have the little, pan flute, I think.
You blow into the microphone.
And so many people hated that, but I thought that was so cool. Yeah. You blow into the flute and you move the thing back and forth to play the different notes. It's almost like you're playing the pan flute in the reel. It was awesome. Cool. I thought that was super sweet, to be honest with you. I thought that was a really, really innovative, cool thing. A really good way to interact with the game on a kind of a different level than usual. I fetching hated everything being on the touch screen, though. All the controls, the sword controls, the moving, walking, and that there was no option to switch to a traditional control scheme. Those games would have probably been some of my favorites in the series. if they had just had traditional controls. But
I love Zelda games, and I never even made an attempt at playing those DS ones because I was like, I don't want to play that. I don't like that control style.
I remember the very last boss of not Spirit Tracks, but Phantom Hourglass, the first of the two. And Parker can attest to this because I was living at your place at the time, and I fought that boss, the final boss, and I was like so frustrated. I was pretty embarrassed about it actually, but I was yelling in the room like at the thing, and like your mom was probably hearing me, and like Parker came up and be like, dude, like, you okay? Like, I was like, but I was so pissed because I was trying to execute the spin attack. And I just could not get it to register consistently. And this guy kept killing me. Again, we're talking about blaming the game instead of blaming yourself. Like, I was doing the circle with the thing, and he would not do it consistently. And I was... Because it wasn't a move that they made you use very often throughout the game. You didn't need to use spin attack, so I just didn't do it. And then on this final boss, it's required that you use the spin attack, and I couldn't get it to work. So I was probably of all the Zelda games I played, those two I would say I was the most frustrated with, even though they had elements of them I really liked.
Yeah. Controlling by I never even
the stylus.
I never.
It's terrible.
I didn't do the mobile Zelda games, but I have played first Zelda. Did not play Zelda 2. Played Link to the Past and all the main console ones after that. And it's really hard to pick my least favorite one, but I would probably have to say Skyward Sword of the main console ones, not including Zelda 2 because I never played that. But I love Skyward Sword. I really do. But the linearity of the ground and how there's only 3 places you can go to and you always go back to the same places again, and I don't know. There was a lot of frustrating, especially when you talk about not reliably having the controller do what you tell it to every time. There's a lot of elements to Skyward Sword that I would say make it my least favorite of the main Zelda games, but I still really liked it. I think it's still a good game. I loved it actually.
I don't think there's a single Zelda game that I could say is a bad game.
I don't think so either.
But
yeah, they do.
Those fetching DS games, they piss me off.
All right, that's a good one, O.J. Simpson and Knuckles. Okay, we're going to have to whip through these last two, but Human Eastron, and this was actually a comment on our main channel, right, where they asked this about is remastering, rebooting really necessary?
Maybe it was. I thought it was on the game channel, but maybe not.
I saw this person at least commented on that as well, so they may have commented on both.
Maybe.
But because we put up a video about remastering video games and stuff today on the main Dark Pixel channel.
I can't think of a single.
So yeah, the question is remastering or rebooting really necessary? Is the question.
I can't think of a single.
But it's fun.
I can't think of a single reboot. No, Tomb Raider was a good reboot. Tomb Raider was a good reboot. But I never played the original one, so I don't know.
Is fine because it's great to try and bring fresh. You could call this newest Zelda a reboot.
Like a fresh
every Zelda's a reboot.
So it's true. Most Zeldas are actually technically reboots. But I don't have as much an issue with rebooting.
I don't have an issue with rebooting.
There's a frequency
that's less necessary.
Yeah, well, because like you look at like for movies like the Spider-Man movie. The first Spider-Man movie was 2000, 2001, and then they did 3, and then they rebooted Spider-Man not very long after that, and now they're already rebooting Spider-Man again. Stuff like that is a little excessive to me, but
well, I think the problem with film franchises, in particular with rebooting, is that you're telling the same story again and again and again. It's like we fetching know by now that Batman's parents get shot. We don't have to see that like for the 10th iteration of it. We know why he got into crime fighting. We understand the reason. We don't need to be told that origin story every single time a new actor is brought in to play Batman. And I mean they kind of did that with the new Batman where it's later into his sort of career. For a while. That's how it should be done. Like, go into a later part for this story we've seen a million times now. Yeah. Like, this new Spider-Man, if they do the whole thing where he gets bit by the radioactive spider again, it's like, we know! Everybody knows how he became Spider-Man. We've seen, like, a million versions of this. So I don't like that reboots often like retell the same story that we've already seen in a film.
Mm-hmm. Now, when does the next Spider-Man movie come out?
Spider-Man: Homecoming
is it next
in a year or two.
It's in okay,
maybe 2018.
So from 2000, when the first one came out, to 2017, that's not even a generation.
No,
and we've had 3. It's been rebooted twice, but done initially once.
Did the second Spider-Man actor? Did they tell his origin story in that first one?
I never saw those. The Amazing
Spider and stuff. They did.
I never saw those.
Or did they kind of start him?
That would be cool if they started him.
I have a feeling they did because I remember there's a scene where he graduates from high school, but.
Oh yeah, because he's like late.
I'm pretty sure they rebooted it, like totally rebooted it. Told the same story again. But I haven't seen it.
Because they took the uncle out.
So correct me if I'm wrong.
So I'm okay with reboots. Like let at least there be another generation. At least let it be like these people who first had it. It's been like it's their kids now who have grown up without it. Yeah. Like that, at least give that much time, because rebooting it multiple times in the generation, the primary audience is still me. I was their target audience for the first one, and I'm once again their target audience for this next one. But like I'm tired. I'm fatigued.
Yeah. I feel like Star Trek.
You got to have a different target audience.
Star Trek has them spaced out fairly well, where you've got the original series. You have, I mean, there was but I'm talking about the original series, Next Generation, and then the current film franchise, and kind of dropping Deep Space Nine and Voyager and stuff. But,
I gotcha.
But
I think that spacing is pretty good.
The way that they did the original series to this new film franchise with the same characters.
That's right.
Is a good way to do that. You have these people who grew up in this time with these characters, and then you have us who were not there.
Yeah.
And we get a version of it, and we weren't there for that version.
Exactly.
That I think that if you are presenting a new version of the same characters to the people who already cared about the other one,
it's the same audience.
That's pointless. What are you doing?
At this point,
they're already attached to that.
Yeah, if they redid the Lord of the Rings movies right now, that would be no.
Like if they're gonna if they reboot Lord of the Rings, it should be when I'm like 60 years old plus, and so that generation after me has had really no. They don't have a version that they got to see in the theater that was like theirs. That's the appropriate time to do that.
What's interesting is that even still, there's this reboot of Ben-Hur that's coming out in a couple weeks.
And it was, you got to make them good too.
And even from me, having watched the original, not even growing up in the 60s or whenever that first came out, looking at this new action film that is being branded Ben-Hur, thinking like, it's too soon. It's been 60 years and it's too soon. Wait a little more time. I don't think that movie needed to be rebooted. I know we're getting away from the video game reboots and just talking about movies, but there's a lot of parallels here, and I don't know, like that. I just think it's crazy.
So I feel like I kind of have this realization that because we went and saw that play last week, South Pacific, right?
Yes.
There was this realization that plays by their very nature are essentially reboots every time a new theater company does a play. Different director, different types of set, cast, everything is totally different. There's like a precedence for it in that medium because it works and it makes sense. But I feel like there's not you get into film, there's much less of a necessity for that, and you get into video games. To me, the only time, because I love that Virtual Console is a thing on Nintendo's systems.
Because RSNES doesn't work anymore. So we will never play those games again unless...
Right, and I would be pissed if the Super Mario World Virtual Console release had updated the graphics somehow, like what Square Enix did with Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, I hate that.
And it's like, no, it's a different leave it alone.
At that point,
it's just crazy, especially because pixel art, I don't think, is something that people will ever be completely done with. Yeah, I think there's always a place for it.
There's an appeal for it always.
But I would be pissed if they were doing that. I'd be pissed. So I love bringing it to a new generation to play on new hardware. I do not think
it needs to be completely
facelifted. I'd agree with that. I'd agree, because I like that too, and especially that they can, because an old movie you can still watch today, but old games you can only play on that hardware, and the hardware only lasts for so long. So bring that exact game onto Virtual Console in a digital form that we can play, because if you just remaster it, we can't get that original game. Maybe do both. I don't know.
Or doing both is probably a good idea. Like with Final Fantasy VII Remake, for instance. Like they have ported Final Fantasy VII to the PS4, the original version that you can get. Awesome. So you can have the original one or this new version. Mm-hmm. So depending on whichever one you like more,
well,
you
and
can
sometimes
play that version.
Like the Ocarina of Time 3D on 3DS, that's the kind of treatment that I'm okay with. They update the resolution of textures and things, and like it's still. I feel like it's almost a case by case basis, at least for me personally. But sometimes you get the sense that
it depends on how
it wasn't necessary
because you can still get the original as it was on the Virtual Console. Yeah. You don't have to play only the 3DS
the original
remake.
Version
you can play that or that. So having the options is good.
Yeah.
But I don't know how that would relate to films like re-releasing Ben-Hur in theaters for a run alongside the new one. You can't really do that, right?
I guess,
they do that with
the new
Star
ones
Wars
on
every
DVD
so
now.
often,
So
they do that with Star Wars. They do that with Jurassic Park. They'll do sort of second runs of it.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's not the best answer.
At least you have the DVD. At least you have something.
Hopefully that sort of answers the question.
So, okay, last question from the Yoshi Gamer. If you could have a crossover between any two franchises, which would they be? We don't have a lot of time to answer this, but any two franchises crossing over.
Mario and Zelda.
No. Mario and Kingdom Hearts, though.
Mario and Kingdom Hearts, that's actually not bad.
Mario and Kingdom Hearts, like the Mushroom Kingdom in Kingdom Hearts.
I think you're cheating there because Kingdom Hearts is already a crossover.
That's true.
And so you're kind of double dipping.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not really into crossovers.
I know, I'm not either.
I really don't care for them.
I kind of like them separate.
I would love Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem to have a crossover game. Can't
and
wait
have
to
it
see
like super musically focused.
Shin Megami Tensei and Persona.
And crossover.
Let's see.
Oh, geez, I need to take time.
That is a really tough question. I've always loved the Zelda games. It would be very interesting to see an adventure Zelda. Well, that'd be interesting.
That would be terrible, I think. An adventure Zelda, like a platforming
I think
kind of
that
thing? Or?
Crossovers work best when they are in the same genre. So this is just a wild thing. But Final Fantasy Tactics and Fire Emblem. Or Tactics Ogre and Fire Emblem. Or, things like strategy RPG franchises that go into the same universe. There's that what's it called? It's made by Capcom. X something or other, and they have like a bunch of Capcom characters all sort of mixed.
Like the Marvel vs. Capcom stuff?
It's not a fighting game, it's an RPG.
Oh.
I think. On 3DS and DS, I think. I forget what it's called, but I was very interested in that.
Very familiar, yeah.
I was very interested in that game. I wanted to try it out because it had like Devil May Cry mixed with like all these crazy ones. I think there were some Nintendo characters in it too.
I think I'm gonna cheat here, and I'm going to, instead of crossing over to video games, I'm gonna cross over a movie and a video game. So Lord of the Rings and Legend of Zelda, Zelda movie or Lord of the Rings game-ish Zelda type. I'm cool with either.
I saw this map that a fan made that had like all the major fantasy maps. They were kind of put into the same world because they have these boundaries where like we don't know what's west, we don't know what's
and
so they put like Westeros in with like Middle Earth in with Hyrule in with like all these different ones. And so that would be actually kind of an interesting crossover if they did exist in the same world, but they were just lands that were like countries that were separated by mountain ranges, and no one had explored the other side.
So when Aragorn had unified the peoples of Middle Earth, he sought to extend his reach beyond the lands of the Easterlings, fashion is Hyrule, and then he's evil King Aragorn, and Link has got
he wanted the Triforce, dude.
I don't know, maybe. That's right, he wanted the Triforce.
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, to be honest.
It's not something I think about
I'm not really like big into crossovers, but I guess just as a final thing, I'll say I would, if there is going to be a crossover, I would prefer that they're at least in the same genre of game when they mix them together. So, Halo and Half-Life kind of thing. But again, I don't think that works. Like,
I know.
You really have to find two stories that
Mario
have
and Sonic
that feel like they go together. Mario and Sonic is a good crossover.
Classic.
Like if they competed at the Olympics.
And again, anyways. I would have never thought that Final Fantasy and Disney could have a good crossover.
Me neither. Man.
It worked. So the execution's a big part of it. It's a tough
I
question.
guess in that sense, anything can work. Anything can cross over and work. It's going to take a lot of thought, and we haven't had a ton of time to think of things.
Not to mention we're in a hurry. So
but Lord of the Rings and Zelda, I'm going to stick with that one. That'd be a sick game, like Hyrule Warriors style.
Wow, that's like a 3-way crossover almost.
Almost.
That's awesome.
Dynasty Warriors,
Dang
Hyrule, Zelda, and Lord of the Rings. Okay,
There you go.
we got to get going. Thank you so much for watching.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
We'll see you again real soon.
Peace.